Our next speaker for this afternoon is international author and speaker Bernadette Vadurro. She will be speaking on the topic, the hiring process, 6 key steps for getting the right people in the right jobs. Bernadette, over to you.
Thank you so much. Are you happy to be here? Are you having a good conference so far? Oh, wonderful. Will you turn to 1 or 2 people and give them a high five or a handshake or a head nod and tell them you're glad they're here? Can you do that for me? All right. Now, how many of you decided that you'd like to participate in the audience response system? If you have a little clicker, please raise your hand. All right. So I'm going to put the clock up right now. And here's the question for you. How many of you have ever hired a family member or a friend? It's very simple. If you have done so, you write 1 for yes, 2 for no. So let's go ahead and see where we're at. You have 10 seconds to decide. And this audience response system tells us how many people have clicked in. I love using the latest technology available. So the only thing we ask is that if you participate at the end of the program that you please return the clickers. They do not work alone. To Lynn here. Beautiful Lynn in the black here. Thank you. So let's give a big hand to Lynn, to Rhonda, and to the staff who worked so hard. You know we've got right people in the right job helping to make a wonderful event for all of us. All right, so let's see what the results are here. So 52% of you say no, you have never hired a friend or a family member. 48% of you say yes, you have. So for the 48% who have hired a family member or friend, please tell me, how did it work out for you? 1, it worked out great. 2, it was temporary, so it worked out fine. 3, we had some challenges. Or 4, it was a disaster for our friendship or family. All right? Please select 1, 2, 3, or 4 based on your experience. There's the clock. How was your experience in hiring your family or your friend? And I talk about this because one of my best friends from high school is a dentist in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm from the U.S. And we grew up together since the 7th grade, this group of girlfriends, and she decided to hire a mutual friend of ours to work in the dental practice with her. And they worked together for about 6 months. They no longer talked to one another, which is a disaster to have a friendship for so many years and to transcend so many things, but then work together. So let's see what you decided here. So, okay, 36% of you said it worked out fine. 18% because it was temporary. 27% said you had challenges, and 18% said it was a disaster. So I want to launch into our program this afternoon, which is hiring the right person for the right job. And I'm going to give you 6 steps for making sure that you do so. The first element is to review and update your job description. Now, most of the slides are in the handout material. Some of them may not, because I am an obsessive-compulsive person, self-employed for 22 years. And this morning at 5:30, I thought, in the morning, we needed a few cartoons and a few more things. So if you want the most updated slides, please leave your name card with us, and we'll make sure to email you the PDF file with every single slide in there. Now, when I make an important point, I'm going to shout out, get it? I'd love for you to respond by saying, got it, and I'll say, good. Get it? Yeah. Good, thank you. All right, so we start with the updated job description. And this is your opportunity to incorporate new elements into the job description. Things that have changed. And you think about the world that we live in right now, things are continuing to change so rapidly. One of the new job elements might be that they need to contact clients via Skype to have regular conversations. And one of the old duties might be faxing contracts to clients, because how many of us even have a fax line anymore? A few of us still do. But for the most part, we're using email to be in touch with our customers and clients. So you want to take a look at the job description and see what elements are no longer necessary and what elements are now necessary. So this cartoon reads, we are looking for someone with the wisdom of a 50-year-old, the experience of a 40-year-old, the drive of a 30-year-old, and the pay scale of a 20-year-old. Isn't that what we hear sometimes in organizations? So the next thing that you do, you look at your job description, you add new elements in, like maybe Skyping with clients, old functions or duties like faxing, and then you share it with the existing employee if he or she is still on staff. So hopefully you're proactive in the process. The minute you get the resignation and you know that you're going to have a vacancy, or if you're doing something different to the organization, shuffling people around, you want to first take a look at that job description and say, okay, here's where we are, and where do we want to go with it? Then you want to share the job description with your team members and perhaps other colleagues that engage with this particular employee, so that you make sure that all of the elements on the job description are relevant and pertinent to the duties that need to happen. Does that make sense for everyone? All right, so that is step one. Now, step two is to decide what type of employee are you looking for. Now, are you looking for someone, and this little cartoon says, if you know how to beg, we may have a position for you in accounts receivable. So it's a little dog there that knows how to beg. So, alrighty, so let's take a look. Do we need somebody that's visionary? Do we need someone who's managerial? Do we need someone who's technically oriented? What is the type of person that we're actually looking for, and decide what kinds of qualities and skills are most important for us to make sure that we have the right person in the right job. List the qualities and characteristics that are important not only to the job but to the team itself. Because when you bring a new personality in, you're going to have, it's like creating a wonderful dessert. And, whenever you cook up a wonderful dessert, you're going to need a little pinch of salt, because if you put just sugar and sweeteners and honey in there, it's not going to taste right. Anybody that's ever done any cooking knows that. So it's the same thing with the team. You want to make sure that you get the elements that your team needs that will enhance the productivity and the performance of that particular team. Now, there may be some rough edges here and there that we have to work through, but it's most important that we know what are the characteristics that we're looking for. Many of the companies and organizations that I work with use assessment tools so that they know what they're getting beforehand. Many times we think, oh, I'm a good read. I can read people. I know someone, I see them, and I just think they're a great individual, and this is what I think. But when they actually come on board, they might display characteristics that really don't work well for the team. So recognizing what is it that we need and what is it that we're looking for. What are the values, the core values that that person is going to bring? This is one of my favorite quotes. How many of you are familiar with Warren Buffett? Anybody ever hear the name of Warren Buffett? He is somebody that was screaming and shouting about the American financial meltdown, the global meltdown, the derivatives, things that were going on in the financial world. He is a self-made billionaire, a wonderful person, and his quote is, in looking for people to hire, you look for three qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if they don't have the first one, which is integrity, the other two will kill you. And we know that in organizations. Having integrity is hugely important. All right, so you can test for character, and there's two groups that I know of. You may know of others. They're online. You can do a free assessment with them for the first time. So that resource is listed in the handout material. And it gives you a feel for what are the values of that particular person, what's important to them, and how will they possibly fit in with the values of your organization. So this is a cute little character cartoon that says, so what makes you think a bubbly personality would be an asset to this company, right? It may be that they're looking for an analytical person, and we've got a bubbly person that's coming into the organization. All right. Test for job skills. We need to know, does this person really know the software and hardware platforms that our company and organization are using? If somebody tells you that they have the skills, we might believe them, but unless we test for them, we really don't know. Get it? Got it. Okay, good. All right. I know we just had lunch, so we're processing our lunch. Number 4 is to prepare a standardized interview questionnaire. And you want to make sure that you ask the same questions to all of the candidates. It's really not fair if you have a standardized questionnaire or you ask questions of one group and not the other group of people that come in. So you want to make sure that you get all of the questions down that you believe are pertinent to helping you assess whether this is a good fit for the job that you have at hand. All right? And utilize open-ended questions for gathering more information. So who from the audience can give me an example of an open-ended question? Anybody? Who's brave? Everybody.
How are you feeling today?
Okay, so how are you feeling today? That might be an example of an open-ended question. Good. Anybody else have an example? An open-ended question is something that doesn't allow the person to answer with yes or no, or a specific date of birth. It allows you the opportunity to really listen to what they are saying. So we want to get as much information from the candidate as possible. So often I go into organizations and I watch who's doing the interviewing, and you know, it's amazing how much information that you will not get if you don't ask those open-ended questions. Tell me, what did you like about the last job you worked at? What were your favorite things that you enjoyed about your last position that you held? What concerns did you have with the company that you last worked with? Those are examples of open-ended questions. So we want to make sure we get as much information as possible from the potential candidate. All right? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And you want to take a look at many elements of the individual when they're coming in. Everything from, you know, you're assessing it. How many of you have heard the saying, we judge a book by the cover? Has anyone ever heard that? Raise your hand if you have. Okay. So, most everybody in the room. Now, many times the book cover isn't indicative. It isn't correct of what's inside the person. But it does give us a few clues. So I would encourage you to interview in groups of people. Why do you think I would ask you to do that? Perhaps to eliminate some of your own personal biases. Because you see, we have personal biases. If I see this gentleman in the front row, would you tell me your name, sir?
Chua.
Chua. If I see Chua and he reminds me of a wonderful friend that I had back in the U.S., and he walks into my office, what is my biased tendency going to be towards Chua? I'm going to like him. I'm going to think he's just like my friend back in the U.S., right? Now you, sir, what is your name? Tom. Okay, so Tom walks in my office, and Tom reminds me of the IT person that drove me nuts at my last job. What's my bias going to be towards Tom? Pretty negative, right? So it helps if you bring in a team of people to assist you in the interview process. You will take notes, you will have your list of questions as you're engaging and talking with the person. Then after the person leaves, you can huddle together with your co-interviewers to see if your assessment is correct in terms of your ideas of how you see that person. Because we have seen experiments where we show people the exact same information. And if there's 10 of us sitting in a room, we can see the exact same identical situation, and yet each of us will come away with a different idea of what has transpired. We have blinders on, we have filters on. And so when you're looking for the right person for the right job, I would encourage you to do individual interviews and group interviews to make sure that you are checking your biases frequently. All right? So now you conduct the interview. You bring the person in. This is step 5. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable. How many of you have ever gone for an interview? Will you raise your hand if you've ever gone for an interview? So I would ask you to be respectful, help the person to feel comfortable, maybe offer them some water or tea, and have them in a comfortable seat, see if they need anything. And then, you know, you don't just have them come in and, so tell me all about yourself. What did you dislike about your job? You want to build a little bit of rapport to see how they feel, you know, assess their character. So take some time with that. All right? And we want to pay attention to the non-verbal communication that goes on as well. Because we know from studies, as much as comes across through the verbal communication, quite honestly, more comes through the nonverbal communication. What is it that they don't say with their body language? You know, the one thing that is international is a big bright smile in many, many places. Now, in some places, maybe not, you don't have to show your teeth, but, you know, having that smile so that people can feel relaxed and comfortable. So we want to check that. If you are dealing with a people person, you're going to hire someone that's going to be engaging others, and you ask them, well, how comfortable are you working with the public, serving customers, problem solving with our guests that come in? And they go, yeah, I'm happy. You know, I like working with customers. Do you think they're really happy working with customers? If you look at the body language, they may be shy, they may be withdrawn. So again, making sure that you get the right person for the right job. One of my first jobs, I was hired to be a clerk. Working in an office, this was 100 years ago because I'm 150 years old. So. 100 years ago, I was hired as a clerk, and I was supposed to be doing all of this filing and all of these, you know, clerical duties. And another person was hired simultaneously to be the receptionist. Now, she really didn't like people, and guess what I did? I loved people. And so they ended up putting the receptionist kind of in this closet and me out front. And finally, the big boss came in and said, you know, we're just going to have to swap some duties here. Because obviously the greeting person is, you know, it's not a good place for her to be in the closet, but that's where she felt comfortable. I mean, it wasn't really a closet, but that's what it felt like it looked like at the time. So getting the right person in the right job is important, and you find that out through the interview, watching the body language, watching the nonverbal body language and what the person is saying to you. Now, back to the little assessments that those of you that have your little clickers, who should do the most talking during the interview? Go ahead and choose. Should it be the interviewer, you yourself, the candidate, or should it be equal? Make a decision and click. 1, 2, or 3. All right, keep clicking there. And let's see what the responses show. All right, so 56% of you said it should be the candidate, and 44% said it should be equal. My thoughts are it should be the candidate. That I want to listen as much as possible to what the candidate has to say. If I decide to hire the candidate later on, then the conversation can become equal. But in the initial interview process, I need to zip this and ask the questions, throw the balls out there, and then wait and listen. And how many of you consider yourself extroverts? May I see a show of hands of those of you that consider yourself extroverts? Okay, extroverts, thank you for being honest, because extroverts have trouble many times, not always, but we have trouble waiting for an answer. Now remember, you know the questions. You created the list of questions, you have them in front of you, you've been asking everyone, and you field the question to the candidate, and if they don't answer right away, what do extroverts have a tendency to do? They'll start answering for the candidate. So, did you like your last job? I bet you did. That's a great place to work. I love Singapore. What a great city, yeah. You know, the candidate doesn't even need to go for the interview because extroverts will do all the talking. So I want to caution you extroverts to allow the candidate the time to express themselves. They may need a moment or two to formulate the answers in their mind's eye. So I might preface the questions like this. I would like to know in a few minutes what you love the most about your last job. I know the XYZ Corporation is a wonderful place to work, and we really are excited to talk with you today. Before we go there, I just want, and I might ask something that, you know, something simple, so that they have a chance to be thinking about what were their favorite things that they enjoyed at the XYZ company. Again, making them comfortable, I want to extract as much information as possible. All right, let's take a look. So we want to also, while we're conducting the interview, pay attention to things like like how prompt are they? Are they early? Are they in the nick of time? Do they run a couple of minutes late? What does that tell us about the candidate? If they can't get there on time for the interview, it might be indicative of a problem that we run into later. All right? We want to determine their level of professionalism. Does it match your job requirement? If it's someone that's dealing with people, are they dressed the way they need to be dressed to engage your customers? So another little cartoon for us, it says, any other people skills besides your 400 Facebook friends? All right, so making sure that we're recognizing that there are a lot of elements important in the process. For those of you with the clickers, the question here is, which of the following is not a good question to ask during an interview? Number one, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Is that a good question? Yes or no? Think about it. Two, where did you feel you could use more improvement in your last job? Is that a good question? Yes or no? Number three, what did you least like about your boss? Is that a good question? Four, to which political party do you belong? And number five, when in the past has your work been criticized? Pick the one question that is not a good question to ask during an interview. Go ahead and select it. Put the clock up there. You have 10 seconds. Strengths and weaknesses. Where do you need improvement? What did you like least about your boss? What political party do you belong to? Or when in the past has your work been criticized? You choose. Take a moment. Da-da-da-da-da-da. We have the drum roll and 96%. Yay! We know the wrong answer there, right? We do not ask questions about people's political preferences. That is an inappropriate question to ask in the workplace, and in many international companies, you could end up with a legal lawsuit on your hands if you ask that question. Also, if you ask questions like, if a woman comes in and you say, so are you planning to have any children in the next few years? That is we don't ask those kinds of questions, right? They're not relevant to the job, and that could be discrimination, gender discrimination. So we really want to ask questions that are relevant and pertinent to the job itself. Get it? Yes. Oh, you gotta do better. All right, we'll keep working it. All righty. So technical ability. We want to find out about their technical expertise. What is it that they believe themselves to be competent about? And we want them to be honest, because we're going to test them for it anyway. So how proficient are you in using Excel? How proficient are you in using this particular software or hardware? I always like to get a self-evaluation. Now, please recognize, sometimes culturally, some people will be resistant to boasting about themselves. So they may say, well, I'm okay in that arena, when they're actually very, very good. So this is always an interesting thing. I find people either very boastful, they're the greatest thing since baked bread, or they are, so-so. And so we want to just, it's always good to get a good feel for where people and how they see themselves. Does that make sense? Good. All right. So asking those kinds of questions, rating their own skills, that gives me an accurate picture of how they see themselves in the long run. Physical requirement. Yes, you can ask this. If the job requires that they physically lift 50 pounds, they're helping in the shipyards, they're helping to pack materials and equipment, then you can certainly ask them, are you capable of, is there anything that would prevent you from lifting 50 pounds? And then they can say yes or no. Now again, if you're working for international companies, you must be very, very careful by asking a question like, do you have a disability? Because then it looks like you are being prejudicial against someone with a disability. And if the disability is irrelevant to the job, then it needs not be asked. If they're not lifting 50 pounds and the job is a receptionist, then it is irrelevant to ask them that unless part of their job is to haul boxes of materials out. Does that make sense? Yes, so we want to just stay focused on what is necessary for the job. We want to stay away from personal aspects like, religion, politics. Those are not relevant for the job itself. It's can they do is necessary? Do they have the skills? So please be careful with those types of leading questions. I was once working with a project manager, and he asked a question that was related to, well, do you enjoy a certain activity? And that question in of itself was indicative. It had, I mean, you know, that particular activity would be related to a certain geographical and geosocial group of people. So again, we want to be conscious, we want to be sensitive, we want to be compassionate employers, and we want to get the right people for the right job. And many of these other aspects are irrelevant. So we want to stay on track with that. All right? Take your notes during your interview. Consider a scoring grid as you're going through, and of course you're not going to be sitting right next to the candidate so they see, 40% on that one, 10% on that one. You know, you just want to keep track so that when they leave, you have a good feel for who this candidate is. Because if you're interviewing several people, it's easy to begin confusing who was who and what person said what thing. So I would encourage you to jot down some notes and then review your notes afterwards and make any other substantial comments that will help you in the selection process. This is critically important. You want to contact all the references listed on the application. And not only the application, but you might also want to talk to people that work in the company to see. And I know that with the companies that I work with as a consultant, many times they'll say, you know, do I recruit, do I hire from within the company or outside the organization? And when they say that they get lots and lots of positive references and comments about the employee, many times they'll recruit from inside the company and continue to hire people and move them on up the ladder. So don't be afraid of getting feedback from other people. What was your experience with that person? Was it a good experience? Are they a good worker? Are they a hard worker? You know, what can you expect? All right? This is essential. Many times people are in such a hurry to hire somebody, they take the first body off the street, they don't check references, they don't test for skills, they don't find anything out, they don't even interview them. It's like, you're a warm body and you're ready to work tomorrow, we need to hire you. I mean, we laugh, but I was in HR. I've seen that happen time and time again. You know, we've got this warm body, but that's about all it is a warm body. So we want to make sure that we have a probationary period where we carefully and closely monitor the employee. We want to make sure that they are performing the way we expect them to, and we also want to remember that we ourselves have a fiduciary responsibility towards their success. And so often my managers and my supervisors hire people and they put them out in the field and they're, you know, it's just swim or sink, as they say in America. You know, they either swim or they fail. They either succeed or they don't. And I believe as good managers, we need to stay with them, holding their hand, not literally, but emotionally and psychologically giving them the support they need to be successful. Because there's a lot of money and time that goes into the hiring process. And in the long run, it's going to pay off. And this is one of my #1 complaints from my managers and supervisors is I don't have time. And my response is that you must make the time to help them be the success that they will be. It will pay dividends upon dividends when they become successful as you would like them to be. So does that make sense? So part of it for managers is scheduling the time that you need up front so that you can make sure that they meet their goals and meet the things that they're looking to do to succeed. Now, let's take a look. Following these steps is going to ensure greater success on every end for you. If you are in a situation right now where you have hired people and it's not working out, then I would encourage you to come across the hall to my next session, which is Motivate or Terminate. How to get rid of the employees that you didn't follow these 6 steps with. All right? Get it? All righty. Well, I wish you great success for your hiring practices and that you always get the right person in the right job. Thank you for coming and being here. Thank you. All right. If you have clickers, please return them to Lynn right now. And if you'd like to join us across the hall, we'll be talking about how to motivate and terminate when you have the employee, how you get them motivated to do the job they need to do. All right, thank you.